Now, to ensure that you're in the appropriate webinar, I want to review the title and topic of today's training event, and that is how to promote, build, and profit from online stores. Now, really, this webinar follows an ebook that InkSoft recently authored and published. And of course, the title of that ebook is How to Grow Your Sales with Managed Fulfillment Programs. So we're gonna do we're gonna touch a lot of topics today, and we're gonna kind of go at 80 miles an hour here. So there's a lot to cover. But I do want to point out that we will be fielding questions at the end of today's event. So make sure to pen down any questions that you have, and I'll take the questions at the end of our webinar and do my best to address those. All right, so now that we have an understanding of the title, let's jump into the big idea. And I read a long time ago that an effective presenter always begins their presentation with a big idea. So here's my big idea, and it probably doesn't come as much of a surprise. It's probably not entirely innovative, but it's important to recognize and understand. So the big idea is this: online stores are critical for developing and maintaining long-term profitable relationships. Now you can see how I've emphasized profitable. So with that said, we're going to touch upon sort of the traditional way to facilitate programs and then sort of the modern approach, but I'm going to share many benefits and other examples to really create a sort of urgency, but also give motivation to really adopting this technology and this strategy. So again, the big idea is online stores are critical for developing and maintaining customer relationships that are lasting and of course that are profitable. All right, so let's move into the next component of this presentation, which is defining the problem. Now, we're going to get into a little background here before we jump into the strategy and the specifics of how to create online stores. So understanding the problem is important because unless you recognize there's a problem or an issue, you're a lot less likely to take action. So here's the problem really impacting decorators today. Intense competition and the convenience economy are requiring print shops and decorators to adapt to selling online. And I'll give you some really detailed examples of what I mean by intense competition and, of course, the convenience economy. So there's really a lot of forces that are really creating pressures to respond to customer demand and, again, competition. So with that said, now that we're talking about the problem and we're talking about intense competition and we're talking about adapting to that competition, I want to talk about something that's commonly referred to as digital Darwinism. So many of today's economists use this term to really describe the phenomenon of those businesses or organizations that adapt and embrace new business strategy and new technologies. Well, they go on to be successful. Whereas those organizations that embrace old models or old conventions and they don't adapt and really respond to different sort of markets and changes, of course, those are the organizations that struggle. So, of course, Darwin was famous for saying it's not the strongest of the species or the most intelligent, but it's the species that are responsive to change. And so really what we're proposing here is change. And that's, again, a result of these different market forces. So let's look at an example of an organization that is probably the prototype for digital Darwinism, and that is Blockbuster, right? So this is an organization that did not forecast or foresee, the pressures and the market changes and really the disruptive nature of organizations like Netflix. In fact, the old adage is Blockbuster actually had the opportunity to acquire Netflix for really nothing. So with that said, you've probably read in the news just this week, there was over 1,000 retail stores that were closed in a single week. And those retail stores were everything from, sort of fashion-oriented retailers to Sears. So traditional retail is really suffering because, again, consumer preferences are changing. Now let's give a few other examples here because really the data always tells the right story. And of course, most successful businesses run their business by the numbers. So given that just last week, 1,000 retail stores closed across different retailers, this is something that a lot of economists refer to as retail apocalypse. So here you can see an example of e-commerce sales as a representation of total sales from retailers. So you can see that growth trend. Since e-commerce was introduced, you can see a growth trajectory for e-commerce sales. And so increasingly, sales are now derived online as compared to retail. Now you can also see similarly with mobile commerce, how more and more consumers are shopping right from their mobile device. So again, we see growth trajectory, and it's important to make investments and pivot where there is obviously growth opportunity. And one last consideration here is the National Retail Federation estimated that between 8 to 12% of U.S. e-commerce growth would occur in 2007. So this ought to be motivation to really embracing this technology and embracing this business strategy of selling online. So let's move into the second component of the problem. So we've talked about intense competition, and you've seen the results of that. So let's talk about the convenience economy. And this is something that economists have branded recently to really describe new consumer behavior. And really the old model that economists taught us was that price is the driver of demand. So the leading theory was that price would dictate demand, and of course the lower priced product or goods would increase demand. However, the new model, or really the new paradigm, is it's convenience that drives demand. Now look at all of today's modern services that have become wildly popular. Look at Airbnb, look at Uber, look at Lyft, look at Postmates, a service that will allow somebody to order food directly from their mobile device and have it delivered. And there'll be, of course, a surcharge for the convenience of that delivery. So the example here is today's consumer is willing to pay a premium and a surcharge for product and services, especially if it can be delivered at a convenience. So with that said, I think this is one of the most important takeaways today, is to really ensure and do some sort of self-analysis to ensure that you and your business, your process, your service, your product, your delivery, all the logistics are really aligned around convenience, because that ultimately is what is going to continue to drive consumer demand. The whole price strategy is really just a race to the bottom. So with that said, now that we have an understanding of the problem, let's dive a little bit deeper. And I mean this only as an understanding and again a forecast of what could occur in the future, not necessarily as a scare tactic. But if you Google search custom ink and Walmart, you'll find Bloomberg, you'll find Washington Business Journal, and many other news outlets reporting that sources say that Walmart is in active negotiations and discussion with Custom Ink for acquisition. So could you imagine if overnight, because of the convenience economy, if consumers could get decorated apparel in 2 or 3 days and they could pick it up from their local Walmart as a result of that acquisition? So again, big organizations are going to continue to focus on speed of delivery, on convenience, as a way to continue to drive their revenues and their business model. And of course, we've learned in benchmarking that you always ought to look at examples that are successful and do your best to duplicate those. Now, another example is Amazon is getting into the decorated apparel and decorated goods space. And of course, Amazon some time ago introduced Merch by Amazon. And this is really fulfillment. So if you look at the ebook we just released, and many of the topics we'll touch on today, is really about managed fulfillment programs using online stores and e-commerce. And that's exactly what Amazon is doing at scale. So can you imagine if you're a popular YouTube celebrity or a Twitch celebrity, or you have a web personality, imagine the ability to create merch that is aligned with your brand, messaging, and identity, and being able to sell that on a platform like Amazon, and Amazon will do all the work. So they're going to transact all the payment processing and order taking, and you're just going to get a cut of the revenue. So little do many decorators know that Amazon is actually the largest shareholder of Kornit stock. So Amazon's not only focused on getting into the market, but they've also made an investment in hardware. And of course, Kornit is a manufacturer of commercial grade direct-to-garment printers. And that's how Amazon, of course, is facilitating all of this merch by Amazon. Now, one last thing I want to share with you. This actually will blow your mind, because it certainly was interesting to me. New York Times, if you search Amazon apparel patent, you will see a very detailed a patent that Amazon was awarded for custom clothing. Now, this is really twofold. Imagine you want a custom summer dress or a custom t-shirt with a unique pattern on it, and you can order that on Amazon, and Amazon will, cut, sew, print a single item. Imagine if you want t-shirts for your team, Amazon can facilitate that. And really the model here is, imagine a bolt of fabric that can be cut on demand, specific sized to the person placing the order, and it can be manufactured. So hyper personalization on a mass scale. So Amazon is looking, again, 10, 15, 20 years in the future. Now imagine if there is no inventory. You don't have to maintain certain inventory, right? I don't have to have products in certain sizes and colors and worry about what inventory levels are available. It can be, the actual product can be manufactured on demand according to the customer. And many of you have probably seen commercials for, men's tailored dress shirts where you can download their app, take a photo of yourself, and there's already long-standing technology that can sort of plot data points and communicate how a tailor needs to cut and sew and manufacture a garment based on a photo of an individual. So certainly looking and forecasting into the future and understanding what big businesses are doing and how they're positioning ought to give you an understanding of how you as a business can compete, especially amongst your peers and in your market, more intelligently. So let's keep this grinding here. I think it's important to recognize, and I mentioned it earlier, that a very important question to ask you and your team and your business, your colleagues, is to ask, what do people want? What do our customers want? What do they expect? And then do the analysis to find out, are you aligned against that? Where is there friction? Where's there opportunity to improve? How can you remove complexity from the process? And I use this as an example of what do they want. Today's consumer, when they want goods, services, or products, what do they typically do? They open up a browser and they go to a search engine, typically Google, potentially Bing or Yahoo or another, and they enter in a search that aligns with their desires. And of course, Google, Bing, and all the search engines respond with appropriate results. It's those results that get the business opportunity, right? So customers want to quickly source and find product and service, and they typically are going to do that as a result of a search engine. Of course, some folks still solicit feedback and referrals, but again, this would represent the majority of total opportunity. Now, for most print shops and decorators that we engage with, when we ask the question, how do you facilitate selling programs? Meaning, let's say that you have an opportunity to do a order for a team, a club, an organization, a company. How do you facilitate that? How do you collect the money and the order details? And typically the response that we get is, paper-based order form. And so here's an example of an actual paper-based order form that my children brought home to me and my wife. So my kids attend Sandpiper Elementary School, and this is the winter shirt order form. Now, on this form, there's not an example of the garment. There's not an example of the print that's on the garment. I don't even know what products are available. Maybe it's just limited to apparel. And here I have to write a check and hope that my 3 kids who are in elementary school return the check in the order form without it getting lost. Furthermore, I have to contemplate where my checkbook might be, because as a modern consumer, everything in terms of bill pay is done electronically. So with that said, this is immediate friction. This isn't what consumers want. And so especially as you start to talk about fulfillment programs for organizations and companies and large entities, if I'm an admin for a company and I have to delegate order forms to collect employee size data for apparel and collect and organize payment, there's just so many touch points in that experience where we can introduce risk, we can introduce failure like misprints or wrong data. It really, the old model just doesn't work. Again, it's not convenient and it creates friction. And we're going to really dive in deeply and understand this to a higher degree. All right, so we've talked about a big idea. We've talked about the problem. Now let's talk about the solution. That's what we're going to stay focused on for the balance of our time together today. So the solution is online stores can service and remove all the friction that we've discussed in the problem identification. So we're going to stay focused on how to use online stores to, again, boost profitability, maintain relationships, remain productive, remain relevant, have the ability to differentiate between you and, say, local competitors. Of course, since we're introducing online stores, and for many decorators that we talk to, online stores are a new concept. And so it's important that we first define what a fulfillment store or an online store is. And I know that might seem elementary, but I want to make sure that we're being very specific here. So of course, principally, at the most basic level, an online store is a website where goods can be sold. And of course, that's done by the internet and of course a web browser. So increasingly, as we saw from the data, today's consumers are continuing to order goods and services online. In fact, a lot of retailers have a challenge that they call showrooming. And that's where a consumer will go to a local retail store like a Best Buy or even a Costco and look at electronics or look at consumer goods and experience it to make sure that it aligns with their purchase intention. And then they go online, and of course they search for the best price, they search for reviews to conduct, their research, and ultimately they're going to do a transaction typically online. So the retailer is just serving as simply a sort of a physical showroom, but they're not capturing that business opportunity. So now that we have an online store defined, and as you'll see from the balance of our presentation, an online store might be a global term, but there's going to be some very specific use cases for using a store to manage these different fulfillment programs. And that range could be anything from a local fundraising store for a cause or an organization or a school, or it could be a sort of a fully managed fulfillment program for, say, a local company who has employee uniforms, promotional materials that they need to source. So that's really the scope of an online store. All right, now it is important that all humans understand the benefits and the perks and really to answer the question, what's in it for me? Otherwise, people aren't likely to take action. So I do want to talk about why invest in online stores and what is the perk or the upside or the benefit. And I'll first start with an analogy. And I wish I came up with this analogy, but I have to give credit to Seth Godin, who, if you don't subscribe to his blog, you should certainly do so because it's a great source of marketing wisdom and insights to get you critically thinking. So Seth has this concept called purple cow. And really, Seth describes that that's the way that you'll be competitive and that you'll thrive is by focusing on this concept called purple cow. And it's a really simple analogy. Everybody has seen a brown cow, right? That wouldn't be something distinct or unique. However, nobody's seen a purple cow. And if you did see a purple cow, that would be remarkable. So purple cow is really an analogy for being remarkable. And remarkable is something that you should focus on everywhere in your business. So your products, your finished goods should be remarkable. And you can achieve that through certain decoration techniques that are distinct and unique, whether it be discharge or just certain additives to inks. So it could be the finished product. It could be packaging. It could be customer service. It could be your branding and your presence. It could be an online store that's branded to the customer. It could take the form of many things. However, today's most successful companies tend to make everything they do, every touch point, every experience remarkable. And that's really the thesis of offering an online store is for many customer experiences, it is remarkable. It's something that hasn't been offered in the past Spiritware program, or maybe we've had to maintain our own inventory in our corporate office and delegate apparel to our new employees. But now there's another option. So now let's kind of transition and talk about benefits to the customer. What does your customer get out of a managed online store? Well, the first thing they get is reduced friction. And I use sort of an acronym that I've branded as FEAT, which is fast, easy, accessible, and timely. So when you look at friction, and we've used the example of the paper-based order form or the other analog ways of distributing printed or branded goods, an online store is fast. I as an employee, I as a marketing manager, I as a business owner can go to an online store that is purpose-built for my intentions, and I can quickly order the goods that are relevant to me or that are available rather. Now, easy, again, I can be on my iPhone, I can be on my tablet, on my computer. I can easily access those goods. So fast and easy. Accessible. In the evening, when I remember that I need to order my employee uniform to start my new job, I can access that online store at any time from anywhere that's convenient to me. Now, timely. So think about organizations, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this. Think about those customers that come to you saying, hey, we're leaving for a family reunion event in 4 days, and we need to get family reunion t-shirts. Can you do that? So of course, being able to respond to timely selling opportunities is critical, right? Because if you can't respond because you don't have the right process, systems, tools, or technology, that's opportunity cost. That's an opportunity lost, right? So with that said, timely things can also be like an event. Something just happened, something just emerged that is timely, that can be leveraged, and being able to respond to those timely things. So again, an online store aligns with the acronym of fast, easy, accessible, and timely. So that really amounts to reduced friction in the customer journey, the customer purchase experience, the customer relationship experience, and that is absolutely critical. And again, the new adage and the new paradigm is convenience drives demand. And that's why we're leading with that as our very first benefit to the customer. Now, we've talked about convenience, and again, that's a demand driver. The next point I want to make is that an online store can be easily created, as we'll show you. But furthermore, once the customer has access to the store, it can be easily shared. So back to the example of Sandpiper Elementary, the superintendent, the principal, PTO, class moms, class dads can easily share and promote a link to an online store. And that can be shared repeatedly at no cost. So think about the costs generally involved with promotion, right? We got to print flyers. Who pays for that? Is it going to be effectively distributed? Whereas an online store is a link. It can be shared time and time again with zero cost. It can be shared on a timely basis. So easily shared and easily promoted with any frequency that is necessary. And whether that be the admin for a company with 200 employees saying, don't forget, make sure you've ordered your updated uniforms or your whatever branded goods might be relevant to that organization. All right, so one of the more important considerations is an online store eliminates any geographical boundaries. So think about like a traditional analog way to distribute goods, right? Spiritwear shirts will be available for purchase at, a school event. Well, what about grandma and grandpa that are proud of their grandchild and want to support the school, but they happen to live in a different state or city or territory, whatever it might be? So there's so many instances where if you're analog, it's hard to cater to consumers that might not have access to physically transact with you. So immediately an online store, again, being accessible, can be accessed and can be transacted from anywhere. There are no geographical boundaries. So long as a consumer has an internet connection and a browser, they can access product from an online store. Now, let's talk about another point that oftentimes can be a bit challenging to understand, so I actually have a visual aid here. Let's talk about non-traditional retailers. So think about retailers that have a brand, they spend a ton of money promoting their brand, they want to perpetuate their brand. How can they facilitate that without having to buy inventory and distribute them themselves? Maybe that is ideal. Maybe it's a complement of the two. So here's an example of, looks like I didn't add the visual example, but my visual example was simply a local watering hole here in Tempe, Arizona. It's called Pedal House Brewery. And Pedal House Brewery has a really slick little mini retail shop with, again, apparel and pint glasses and other promotional product. But the beauty is, because Tempe, Arizona has kind of become a destination, think if I visit that brewery and I didn't buy the shirt and I regretted it, I have the opportunity to go to pedalhousebrewery.com and I can click on merch, and there's an online presence or online store where I can then get those goods. So for many retailers, especially non-traditional, the ability to have their branded goods and managed on an online store can be a great way for them to achieve all their marketing goals, which is perpetuation of their brand, which is monetization of their brand, and it's a great way to do it. All right, so let's talk about benefits to you as the print shop, as the decorator, as the promotional product distributor. The first benefit is going back to the example we shared with Purple Cow. You immediately have a point of differentiation that isn't easily achieved. So when your prospect comes to you and says, well, why should we commit our business to you compared to the guy down the street? Well, in day of old, it was all about, well, we can beat their price, we have great customer service, and we have great quality. Well, today's consumer expects that of every business, right? Of every vendor, of every retailer, of every merchant. So no longer can you compete on that trifecta of price, of service, of quality. That's like a no-brainer, right? You need to do those things. So what are the extra points of differentiation that you can offer as part of your unique selling proposition? And an awesome exercise to really enforce this is to author your elevator pitch, right? And of course, the elevator pitch is if you had an opportunity to pitch a executive or a PTO member or an organization decision maker, and you can only do that while you're entering an elevator and you're going up to the sixth floor. So you have 30 seconds to make that compelling argument. What does your elevator pitch look like? And is it any different than the guy down the street? So with that said, this is an important way for you to differentiate by saying, hey, we offer managed online stores. We remove all the friction from ordering, from payment processing, from accounting, reporting, product distribution, logistics. We as your partner handle and facilitate all of that, and you just get the benefit of awesome quality printed product. So with that said, the other benefits, for all the transactions and all the data that is created from an online store is electronic. So all the friction of spreadsheets and data entry and creating reconciliation of invoices and reporting, all of that goes away. And you can reinvest that payroll overhead, you can invest that human capital back on things that actually matter, like marketing, like soliciting new business. So that said, electronic order keeping and record keeping is effectively inherent from an online store. So as a consumer checks out, you have all the consumer data, all the order data, all the product data stored and accessible in electronic format. Now, online stores are easily scalable. So let's say that you create an online store for an organization and it was profitable, your customer loved it. Well, you can easily duplicate and replicate that without inheriting any extra overhead, right? So oftentimes it's hard to scale, meaning let's say you've maximized your print capacity. So in order to increase the capacity, I'd have to buy more machinery. However, with online store technology, it is possible to use the same system to continue to get more and more benefit. And that is really the purest definition of scalability. It's also a term that's oftentimes thrown around and misunderstood or misleveraged. However, I think that was a good example and analogy for using an online store without any added investment to continue to get more and more benefit. Now, we're almost done with sort of the how, the background, before we actually jump into the actual tool. So for those of you that are growing impatient, bear with us. We're almost done. Just trying to make a solid case here before we move on to the next step. Now, of course, less friction compared to paper order forms. And we've talked about that previously, but I wanted to underscore the point that, believe it or not, there's less cost, there's less overhead and less friction and complexity and room for error from the old way of doing things with paper order forms and spreadsheets and other ways to collect order data in comparison to an online store. So believe it or not, you're in an immediate advantage on all bases when you adopt an online store methodology of running ordering programs compared to the old way. All right, marketable. So again, back to the Purple Cow example, back to your unique selling proposition, back to differentiation. Online stores and managed fulfillment programs are highly marketable. This is something that is typically not part of the marketing mix for most decorators. Meanwhile, they're talking about product, price, quality, and service. You can talk about something that is truly distinct and unique. This is why you ought to choose us as your partner. And again, the more points you can have that are clear, the better you can align with the convenience economy, the better you're going to drive demand and urgency. All right, now let's get into the how, right? So there's a few key things that we need to understand. And really, online stores are ideal for many selling opportunity, but how do you find the right customers, right? So let's do a quick definition of who makes a good candidate for a managed fulfillment store, an online store. Well, most certainly companies. So companies with employees, typically over 20, make excellent candidates for an online store. So we just did a blog posting. If you go to inksoft.com and click on blog, you'll see that we just announced 5 new team members that joined the InkSoft team. So, there's a lot of overhead onboarding a new employee, training and paperwork and, all the legal forms that are required. And, many organizations, need to give employee uniforms and employee merch because some of these employees will be expected to attend trade shows. And so think if you can facilitate handling all of the printed goods and marketing materials, marketing collateral for a company, and an online store is the perfect way to host that. Now, schools, I think this is probably the most obvious example, but schools make an excellent candidate for these online stores since they've typically managed inventory in a school bookstore and all the accounting and money collection. And schools are constantly doing events where they need t-shirts and branded product. They're always trying to raise money as funding continues to get cut. So schools and education makes awesome candidates for online stores. In fact, we have many prospective InkSoft customers that call and say, hey, listen, I've been doing business with this school district or the superintendent, this PTO organization for years and years and years, and I got a request for proposal that now requires and mandates the maintenance of an online spiritware store. So I can assure you that educators talk because they go to conventions and they have forums and communities. And when there's a positive experience like, hey, listen, we were able to raise money for our school as a result of using this organization, they offered online stores, that becomes sort of viral, right? And there's a lot of demand gen now amongst educators. Now, sporting organizations, so teams, whether it be an actual team for, say, a school or education, or club teams, think about all the different, clinics and camps and all of the sporting organizations in total make for prime candidates for branded product and, of course, online stores where, players can get uniforms and required items, away and home uniforms, but also fan cloth. And think about being able to sell product to, mom and dad that want to represent the school and the team. So great opportunity to represent those organizations. And then we have kind of just generalized like clubs, associations, groups. This could be everything from church groups to just hobby organizations and clubs, whether it be gaming. I mean, there's so many special interest groups, and that ranges everything from political to, again, enthusiast. But all of these organizations love to represent their brand, their messaging, their ideology. But they also love a branded online presence because it reinforces their identity. It really is something that I've used in the past to describe the nature of these groups as tribal. So look at, I kind of lend this from a book I read, How Soccer Explains the World. But the example in the book is hooliganism. And you look at, there have been soccer hooligans that will stab the opponent, the opposition's fan base, right? They're so emphatically crazy about their team and their identity. And if you look at a soccer match, you'll notice that the stadium's typically divided into 2 colors, right? The color representing their primary team. So branded product for these organizations. But furthermore, the marketplace. If I'm a tribal member and I love my team, or I love my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu studio, my yoga studio, and I can buy branded gear at a branded store, it just invokes and reinforces that tribalism. So there's actually a lot of psychology in the background operating here versus purchasing product from a generic presence, right? All right, there's my slide with the Pedal House. I knew I had it somewhere. I guess I just misappropriated it. So here's an example of Pedal House Brewery in Tempe, Arizona, and here's a little pop-up shop that they maintain in the brewery. But again, the ability to take these products and extend them to online is a huge opportunity. Now, mind you, Pedal House is a pretty large brewery restaurant. They also have a large staff. So again, if I can facilitate the non-retail program, I can facilitate the employee uniform, I can assist their marketing team with all of their giveaways and promotional product, whether it be signage, whether it be stickers, and I can do that from one destination, and it's an awesome proposition for everybody involved. All right, last bit I want to talk about is a sort of a setup checklist. What is it that you need to facilitate an online store? And then we're going to actually get into the process of building a store and looking at the technology that InkSoft offers to make all of this a reality. All right, so in terms of setup checklist, we have payment. So this is a point of discussion that you ought to have with your partner, since every selling opportunity is going to be unique. But the question that needs to be asked is, how are we going to facilitate payment and collect money? And that can extend to invoicing and reporting. So there's a lot of moving parts. Price. Coming to an agreement upon the price for these finished products, right? If it's a fundraiser, talking about of the price and of the payment aggregated, what percentage goes back to the organization and for revenue share. Quantity discounts. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts there, as you likely know. Of course, merchandising and product. What product is going to be relevant for the selling opportunity and merchandising appropriately? Of course, promotion. How do we promote and maximize the selling opportunity? If it's a fundraiser, we want to raise as much money as possible. How are we going to do that together? And of course, getting a commitment from your customer to actively promote. But promotion can also be, how do we educate the employees of how to order their employee uniform? How specifically will that transact? The next thing we need to talk about is sort of the logistics, right? Shipping. And shipping takes many forms, whether it be pickup, local delivery, direct ship to retail, direct ship to event. A lot of ways to get the end product to the customer. All right, so in terms of payment, the options that are available for online stores, especially in InkSoft, really have full coverage. So payment can take the form in the most common way, which is a credit card or debit card. The other opportunity is gift certificates / store credit / digital currency. So think about a company that issues their employees a $200 per quarter stipend for uniforms. And many organizations do that. Even state, city, local government does reimbursement programs or allotments. So there is not going to be maybe a debit credit card transaction. The employee is going to use digital currency to acquire their product. However, they'd have the opportunity to maybe Johnny wants an extra shirt or hat or uniform. He can order an extra and just pay the difference. So popular way to manage fulfillment programs in terms of payment. Of course, purchase order. So marketing manager can submit a PO and is required as part of your agreement to submit a PO to acquire branded goods as proof of sort of record. Coupon codes, and so this could be coupons to facilitate ordering. So this coupon code will provide a $200 discount. And so it's an alternative to the digital currency, but still achieves the same end result. The ability to arrange payment later. So marketing manager could acquire the product they need because they can't forecast or predict accurately. So they can order a product with a commitment to pay later, and that's an option as well. Now, of course, establishing payment terms is a big part of that mix, right? Whether it be 30-day terms or net 45, whatever it might be. These are the questions and considerations in terms of payment. Now, in terms of price, of course, the finished product price for the good, making the decision, hey, is the 3XL going to be the same price as, say, the medium? And just making those expectations very, very clear so there's no challenges. Of course, configuring any kind of shipping price, whether it be flat rate, whether it be real-time rates, whatever's appropriate. Paid in advance versus paid on demand. So certain products like hard goods. So for example, if a company wants promotional product and they want an array of that promotional product, you might require that they pay in advance for any kind of hard goods. They own that. You will inventory and manage that for them. And that might contrast with on demand. Maybe they can't expect how many sizes, what color and quantity of their uniforms they need, since they don't know what product sizes will align with their future employees. So that way you can do on demand. Of course, establishing minimums, so commitments, right? I'm not going to invest in launching and managing one of these fulfillment stores unless there's a semi-balance of commitment. And that can take the form and fashion of you're going to promise to market this weekly on your Facebook channel, your Facebook user group, your email marketing, and all your other social media channels. Or you're going to take acquisition of 100 units as a minimum commitment. Those you own, but again, we'll manage the inventory and shipment, and then everything else goes on demand thereafter. All right, in terms of product consideration, and I assure you we're almost done here with the PowerPoint, the product consideration would be what primary products are relevant, and really isolating those primary items that the customer wants, but also considering secondary and complementary product. So this is easiest way to boost profit, especially with online stores, is I use the grocery store checkout analogy. So at grocery store checkout, there's likely 150 $1 to $3 items that stare at you. And think of a typical grocery store. If 1 out of 10 transactions, they're able to get somebody to spend an extra dollar over the course of a year, that could represent millions of dollars in added revenue. So think about secondary and complementary products. Hey, the caps would be a really great complement to the apparel that we've configured, or lanyards or koozies, whatever product would be appropriate. So think about the one more sell opportunity, as grocers refer to it. I want to sell a 99-cent pack of gum, and again, I have great margin, and over the course of time, that volume really stacks up. So again, in terms of product pay in advance versus invoiced, are customers going to pay for the hard goods in advance? You'll maintain inventory, or are they going to be invoiced as they order? This is important questions to ask and address. Establishing inventory levels for product. How many of these do you expect to sell based on previous activities? How many do you expect that you'll need? What happens to inventory that doesn't get consumed? Who's responsible for that? So again, it's all about expectations at the end of the day to make a long-lasting, profitable relationship, right? You can set up an online store and you can get it wrong and sour a relationship as a result of not really asking these questions. Now, in terms of promotion, what is the timeline? If it's a fundraiser, how much time should we establish to maximize sales? Of course, what is the messaging and communication that needs to be portrayed to the end customer? What is the use case? Is this a fundraiser? What is the messaging? What is the call to action? Making sure that you are collaborating with your prospects and customers to really get that information, that message clear. Establishing urgency. I heard a great analogy a long time ago, and it's stuck with me for ages. The speed at which you drive to the hospital is dictated on the rate at which you bleed. So the best way to induce urgency and increase purchase intention is to create urgency. And that can be done through timeline. It can be done through a sale. It can be done through the messaging. So making sure that you and your partners are aligned around urgency to maximize opportunity. Now, branding. What version of your corporate logo, what version of your team logo should represent the store? What are your primary color and secondary color? And what do you have an adage or a message that should be reflected? A mission statement, a value statement, a vision statement, and again, reflecting that on the store. All right, so our last slide here we're going to bust through is shipping. So of course, shipping takes the form of many. So it could be pickup, it could be delivery, it could be drop ship and distribution. So think about a company that, hey, we're going to a trade show. I need 800 shirts to be shipped directly, freighted directly to the trade show for distribution. So being able to drop ship and facilitate that product. Direct ship. Hey, we're doing a local event with a radio station, and there's a lot of ways to distribute product, but making sure to have those clear conversations. Alrighty, we are done with our nerdy presentation, or at least the PowerPoint part. All right, let's transition now into the tool, right? So we've learned that you have to have the right strategy and know-how, and I hope that my presentation has facilitated that to a degree. Now let's talk about the tool. So as many of you may know, and for those of you that don't know, InkSoft is a software company, and our history has always been creating a platform that allows decorators and those that sell printed goods to sell online effectively. And the way we, of course, manage that is through online stores. So let's take a look at what an online store looks like when created in InkSoft. So here's an example of an online spiritwear program, maybe for a school or a team or a club. So this is a range of apparel that was merchandised as part of that process. And again, this is just a demo site. So you can see an array of different product, different colorways, and you can see here there is a fundraising element to this website. So in InkSoft, you can facilitate fundraising using online stores. I can assure you that that has been a major driver of revenue and profit for many of our customers, because every organization needs to promote their identity, their cause, their ideology. And many of these organizations also need to raise money to continue to promote their ideology, their mission, their goals. Schools, teams, clubs, great candidate for fundraising stores. And InkSoft facilitates that by allowing you to add fundraising messaging, so a title, a description, and then configure an end date. So again, establishing urgency with a timeline. You only have 23 days to order. If you do not place your order, well, you're not going to get a really cool branded exclusive garment. And of course, also showing the amount or progress towards the fundraising goal. So this is a wildly popular tool that's built into InkSoft that allows you to differentiate and offer fundraising programs that are managed to your customers. Now, of course, schools and organizations have always done fundraising with apparel and printed goods. The challenge is it's done on an analog basis, right? It's paper order forms, it's door knockers, it's really analog ways to facilitate that. The beauty is you can still do that, and the organization can still do the analog, but you can use online to support that effort as well. Now, here's an example of what maybe a corporate or company store would look like. So again, if InkSoft wanted to maintain a merch store for new employees and team members, and we wanted to have an array of different printed goods, and we wanted to have an array of different promotional products, whether this, again, be for a marketing manager to order stuff to send to a trade show or an event, or do a giveaway or a contest. This could be one destination that manages all of that. Now, here's another example of a corporate fulfillment store that might just be all promotional items that are already decorated. So with InkSoft, you can create a really broad array of different online storefronts that will service all of the things that we've discussed. So what I want to talk about now is how you actually create an online store using InkSoft. So I think the challenge has been in the past, there's always been online e-commerce platforms, but they're all decentralized, meaning I can build a store, but then I have to license another store for another opportunity, and then license another store for another opportunity, and they're decentralized. So there's 3 separate online stores that don't have unified reporting, order management, product management, and we've seen people create a Frankenstein solution. So they have a lot of online stores, they have a staff that's managing all of those, and it's just complexity after complexity, but the value is still there where it drives that. So what InkSoft has done is we have a unified order manager. So of all of the online stores that you create, they all flow into one order manager. So you have unified order data, reporting data, and we've also created a very simple and powerful way to create a new online store. So with that said, what you can do in terms of creating a store is you can go web stores, create new, and you have an option to create an online store using our new store creation process. So this is something that we just released about 2 months ago. This is just an updated way to create an online store. And what we wanted to achieve was just a simple step-by-step sort of questionnaire to build an online store. And we're going to go through this process together now so you can see really how quick and easy it is to configure a store. But you can also see the features that are available to facilitate really any series of an online store. So let's say that, well, I'll just show you. So with that said, here is the online store creator. This is a step-by-step process. This is responsive, meaning you can create a store on an iPhone or a tablet. So what I could do is enter the store name. So in this case, what is the name of the store? And that's going to reflect on the order form. It's going to reflect in reports. It's going to reflect on email order confirmation. So it's important that you put the store name so it's descriptive. Keep it short and simple. So in this case, I can put in, I'll just do Sandpiper, flag football, or whatever it might be. We'll do soccer camp. How about that? So type in the store name, and then of course you can put in the directory for the store, like where will people find it, right? If they go to your website or they click on a link, what will that link look like? So in this case, I'm going to put in Sandpiper Soccer Club. So put in, we'll do Sandpiper Soccer Club. So this is the way a customer will navigate to the store. So once you enter in that information, you can click Next. InkSoft is going to take you to the next step in the process, which is contact information. So if somebody, a consumer, goes to an online store and they have a question about a product, or maybe they're uncertain, and they click Contact Us, InkSoft is going to display the contact information for that particular store. Now there's also a Contact Us form. So let's say the customer, maybe it's midnight, they don't want to email or call, they just want to zap you a message. They can do that by filling out this form. They can also see your contact info from this screen here. So what you can do is, by default, your main contact information is established here, but you could change that to reflect the PTO, or maybe the admin, or the marketing director. So you get to choose what contact info will display. All right, now we can establish the logo and the store icon. You can skip this step if you don't yet have it configured. However, one feature that we have built into InkSoft is a really slick tool that automatically analyzes the colors that are in a graphic. So I'm actually uploading a vector logo that I want to represent the store. You could, of course, upload raster. The beauty of uploading a vector file is it becomes Retina sort of quality. So all the Apple products that use Retina display, which has a huge amount of pixels, when you use a vector file, there is no resolution. It is infinite. And so InkSoft allows you to actually upload vector files for the store logo, which is a nice feature. Now, when you upload a logo, we analyze the colors in that logo and we'll establish that. So the store will be branded accordingly to the logo you've uploaded. And I'll share that and more insight here in just a moment's time. Now I can go to upload icon and I can choose an icon, and that uploads and establishes, and you'll see that on screen. So with that said, InkSoft processes that. We actually give you a little preview. Here's what that store icon will look like in the browser tab along with the store name. Now I'm going to click next now that I've branded the store, and we're going to go to production schedule. Are you producing product on demand? Meaning if a customer orders, are you going to produce it and then ship and deliver it sort of on an on-demand process? Or are you going to collect orders for a period of time and then sort of bulk process everything? So here you can make that decision. And InkSoft will use this as part of whatever shipping options you've made available to establish real accurate expectations. So if you're producing on a specific date, InkSoft will look at the processing time that you've entered into InkSoft, the shipping time, to establish a range, an accurate range of when the customer might expect those products. Now, in terms of shipping, here you can establish shipping methods. So with that said, I can say, yes, we want to add shipping methods like UPS Ground or FedEx Express. So you can make that selection and then choose any of the shipping methods that you've configured in InkSoft. You can add more than one. So you could add economy, you could have rush. Now you can also add pickup locations. So with that said, let's say you don't want to force a parent to have to spend $5 for shipping. Maybe they want that because it's convenient. Or maybe they'd rather have their student or their child, or maybe an employee would rather just pick up. So in this case, you can put in a pickup location. So you can put in the location name, you can put in the country and address. Of course, you can put in processing time. So if you want to pick up, how many days will you wait until it's eligible for pickup? And of course, you can put in detailed instructions about pickup. So you'll be able to pick up from HR office on this date. Make sure to bring your order number, whatever it might be. So that said, you can configure pickup locations, and you can do more than one. So pick up from HR department, pick up from new employee orientation seminar, and again, and that way you can sort of package product and deliver product that's aligned with what the customer expects. And that's the end shopper plus your customer. Now the next step, here we can configure checkout settings. How are people going to pay you? And remember, these are some of the questions we asked in the setup checklist. Is payment required, or can they arrange payment later? Do you want to accept purchase orders? If so, do you want to require that they attach? I can make those decisions here and click next. Now this is one of my favorite and probably one of the more important features to support really almost any array of a fulfillment program. This is the ability to create custom checkout fields. So in the checkout process, you can make a field required and say department. So let's say that you need to collect data that your main partner, meaning let's say the sheriff office, they want a report of by department how many orders were processed. They want to know employee or badge number. They want to know employee number for cost centers and for them to justify budgets. So I can put in department, and I can put in, enter your department. Or I could even do a drop down. So you can do a text field or a drop down, and I could say select your department. And of course, you could describe that field. So I can put in, please select your primary department. And of course, what I could do is put in field choices. So A, B, C, and you see a preview of that. So in the checkout process, the customer would be required, if you make required, to enter in or select whatever data is relevant. This is an extremely powerful way to collect the right information that could be used for decoration. It could be used for, again, reporting and accounting, for distribution, so you know how to package product relevant to how it will be distributed. So very, very powerful feature, and that's the ability to establish custom checkout fields. In this case, we'll just say no. I do want to point out you can use unlimited checkout fields, so there's no limitation on how many of those you can establish. Now, here's our store notifications. So if you and your team want to get notifications based on some of the transactions that happen from the store, you can configure those now. So I can have my production manager get certain notifications. I, as the business owner, get other notifications. So great way to configure that here. Now, do you want to put in social media links on the online store? Now, the decision is, do you want to promote your social media channels as the partner, or is it going to be important to the organization that they are promoted and branded fully, including their social media channels? Well, you can opt to establish those here. Now, in the next step, store policies. This is a regulation requirement, having privacy policy, terms of use. But we also let you do some marketing messaging in the checkout. So in the final thank you confirmation message, you can put added values there like, use this coupon code for, your next transaction. So you can message and provide all of that here. Now, domain, do you want to operate this from your main domain name / store name that you configured in the first step, or are you going to build a custom domain? Now, let's say that a custom domain might be great for a national selling opportunity that's going to be long term. Think of it as, PokemonTshirts.com. You might want to anchor a domain name that's marketable and brandable and long term, and you can do that by entering that here. So let's go ahead and click next. Now here you can add product if you have the product configured. Now if you don't yet have product built and enabled, well, you can skip this step. You can say no, and you can add later. So in this case, I'll just click yes. And here you can use InkSoft and you add products that you've already sort of configured or built or have available to you. You can add those to the store and click Complete Store Setup, and you are now done. So I explained this process, but typically this takes a few moments' time to configure. So with that said, that is how you build an online store quickly and efficiently, and that is back to the point I made about scalability. Now, of course, once the store is configured, you can go to the store where you can manage the store. So here I am at a store. I'm going to go ahead and sign in, and I'm signing in as an admin, so of course you're going to have extra controls. Those controls will manifest here, as you can see. So the ability to go to another store, the ability to go to the main admin portal, go to your profile. The main function here is the ability to edit the store. And so what I'm going to do is toggle the edit mode. And here I have access to the style controls. And that means I can change the branding and the colors that I might have assigned to this specific store. So as you click a color, you actually see the example update live on screen. So I can choose a color from the color palette that was established when we uploaded the logo, or I can choose a custom color. It's a matter of your preference. Now you can even manage color at individual elements. So here is the fundraising component. I can go back to manage colors individually. So in the style controls, these are sort of main styling for the main website. So what is the main accent color? What is the main background color? What are the main fonts in use? What are the sizes? But then again, you have control at the individual elements. So the way we've designed this system is to visually allow you to click on an element of your store and edit that specific feature. So if I want to go to the promo bar, which is a feature that you can add to the top of an online store, you have the ability to edit the promo bar. So the color, the messaging, the text placement. So really, every store being unique is going to have different components or different features. And the way we facilitated that is with a component library. So if you want to add different features and functions, you can simply go to the component library, add the appropriate feature like fundraising, like a slideshow, and you can easily add that to your store and choose where you want it located. So do I want the product to display right below the store logo, and then the fundraising element to display at the bottom? So we've tried to make a simple solution so you can quickly create a store, and then you can quickly manage the store, whether it be the feature and function, whether it be the settings. All of that's done through this very simple and very unique user interface. Now, I do want to touch upon fundraising since it's such a critical part of InkSoft, and there are many transactions on a daily, monthly, weekly basis driven from fundraising, and that is the ability to establish a sales goal. Now, a sales goal can take the form of a dollar amount. So we want to raise $1,000 to keep Sandpiper band alive or invest in new equipment or whatever it might be. So you can also do a payout metric. How are you going to pay your customer? Is it a percent of profit that's generated, or is it a amount per unit? So let's say that you have a $15 garment and you've committed $10 from every garment. You would select the dollar amount. So very simple way to configure the financial goal for a fundraiser. Now, if you're not doing financial, you can simply do a unit sold goal. So I can say, hey, we're trying to sell 500 shirts or 500 koozies, whatever it might be. And of course, InkSoft will keep track of how many units have been sold as a way to track the progress. Now, the other option is to do an open-ended goal, which is to say, listen, we don't really have a timeline. We just continually want to raise awareness and raise money for the Phoenix Children's Hospital. And the hospital is going to continuously promote it. Hey, donors get a free shirt with a donation over $500. Here's how you redeem and select your size and color. So a lot of ways to facilitate fundraising. The most common one is a financial goal with a percent of profit is the most common setting that we see. So you can configure that here. You can even elect to disable a store once that goal is met. So if you and your partners agree that, hey, once we hit our goal, let's go ahead and close it down and be done with it. But you can also reset that progress to continue to extend that into the future. Now, in terms of description, here's where you can put in the title and the message and the call to action, really give purpose to the fundraiser. And here's where I can establish the end date if that's relevant. So to create urgency, we can put an end date, and InkSoft will just update the time and the date to let people know that they have a limited time to place an order. So really that is kind of an introduction into the InkSoft platform. Everything that's offered here is also responsive. So as you can see, whether it be a tablet or a mobile device, as you can recall, it's all about being accessible and it's all about being easy. And so we've created very specific views and user experience, that would be optimal for a mobile device compared to a desktop shopping experience. So a lot of the things that we've talked about are already enforced and built into the InkSoft platform. Now, I do want to underscore one final point. Let's say that you create a store and then something changes, right? The customer wants to add new product, or they want to you need to adjust the production schedule. So all of the questions that you were asked in the store setup process, you have the ability to come back and modify any point and any time. So let's say that the messaging changes, anything, the ship schedule, shipping options, your customer wants you to add new product. You can always iterate, and you can iterate by simply just making modifications, as you can see here. It's a very simple proposition. And that could be, hey, we want to rearrange the product on the store. So I can drag and drop to change the order of the product, and that just happens live on screen. You can click Save and Publish, and those changes are now going to be reflected on the online store. So with that said, it is now time for me to shut up, and it's your time to ask questions. So I will refer you to the webinar little toolbox where you can click on Q&A, and there you can type in a question, and I will do my best to read the question and then address that question online. So we'll take a minute's time here. We'll kind of pause to let you enter any questions that you might have.